Well, we're back and it is the next day, and we are going to work on the inside of the windmill bag. I have my pieces laid out here, and I will go over that a little bit, and we will take a second look at the outside of the bag so you can see and know what to expect for that. So this is the outside of the bag I have set up over here, and it is really cute. I'm really happy with it. And this is the inside of the bag. This is the lining, and the directions state that we are to lay it out the same way that we laid out the outside of the bag. And I have my trusty little Mighty Notions iron heating up for me here. And one thing that you need to note when you're laying this out and getting ready to sew it, you will take your first portion of your windmill and lay it out. Oops, I'm sorry. You'll lay it out like this so that it is you'll sew here on your inside, and then for this section down here, you'll sew here when you lay this over like this. And where your two fabrics meet, and it makes your L shape, the inner part of your L shape, here and down here, you want to leave a 1/2 inch. So what we are going to do is I have my Creative Grids Notion ruler that I got from my local quilt shop down by me. And I'm going to mark with my friction pen. This is a friction pen. I got this from RebsFabStash. And I am going to mark a 1/2 inch on here so I know where to stop when I'm finishing up my seam. And we want to be just a 1/2 inch right here. We want to leave this because what you're going to do is when you flip this out, you're going to sew these corners together here, and then you're going to sew this corner together and this corner together, and it's going to make the inner part of the bag shape. And so we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. So I will mark this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance to kind of help me to know where to sew. My plate on my Singer has measurements that are not exactly a 1/2 inch. It's 3/8, 4/8, 6/8. So when it says a 1/2 inch, sometimes I do this just because it makes it easier. And I did not do it on the outside of the bag, but it was black. And in my defense, the pen is black. So, there is that. So I'm going to lay these out, mark them and pin them, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I have the both pieces of my windmill pinned and marked. This is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And here is our 1/2 inch here to allow us the extra room we need when we sew them together. And here is our 1/2 inch here for this leg of the windmill. Now I am going to get set up at the sewing machine to put these together, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we are ready to sew the legs of our windmill together. And I have a things here that I just want to show you really quick before we get started. This is the standard presser foot for my Singer sewing machine, and this is the one I'm going to use today. I had my other presser foot on here the other day when we were working, which was this one. This is the one I had on the other day. This is my 1/4 inch presser foot that I use for quilting. This little line right here, this line right here is like an 1/8 of an inch. I don't know if you can see that. That's like an 1/8 of an inch right there and right there. And this from here to here is a 1/4 inch. This presser foot, along with all these other ones, came with my sewing machine, and I really love it. And this one is my free motion quilting foot that comes with my machine. I got an extension pack with my machine when I bought it, which came with a bunch of extra presser feet. And we will work with this one in the future. It's a great presser foot, and I've done a lot of free motion quilting with it and had a lot of fun. And I also have in this box right here, this is my walking foot that came with my machine. This little knobby thing right here that makes these presser feet on this go up and down goes over top of this pen. It rides over top, and as the arm goes up and down, it goes up and down and the presser foot jumps along. And this works wonderfully. I use this. This can be used for a lot. You almost don't have to take this off, but I do, just to preserve it and use it when I really need it. So I just thought I would share that with you. And this is another presser foot that I was working with earlier today. This is a rolled hem foot. I've been practicing. I'm not proficient with this presser foot, and I have some dresses that I need to hem for a wedding, and they have like a chiffon like overlay, and so I'm going to need to get a little more proficient with that presser foot. But for now, this is the presser foot that we're using today. This is just my standard presser foot that every machine comes with this one when you buy it, usually. That's how that works. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Let me turn this so you can see. Okay, now again, we have our marking, our line marking for, turn another light on, there we go. I have our line marking here so that we know where to sew. I'm going to start up here at the top and go down to the end. And I am going to do a little forward and back stitch so that I can secure that, because we're turning it, and because we're turning it, puts a little stress on those corners. So you may want to consider doing that when you put your bag together. And the other day when I was sewing, and I kind of went, ooh, I no more than said, you got to watch your pen. I hit the pen. So I had to stop the video for a second while I regrouped here. So that's what happened the other day. You know, never say never, because those things happen to all of us. I mean, I've been sewing for, oh gosh, my whole life. I mean, I got my first sewing machine from my mother, her hand-me-down, when I was 10 years old. She gave it to me, and she got a Kenmore that was, I still have it. It's in the closet. One of these days I'll dig it out and show it to you. It's really an awesome machine. And I still use it. It still works. I've got it. I've had it cleaned and such over the years, and repairs made to it, and it still works just fine. It's a workhorse. It can handle some pretty heavy-duty stuff, so... We're almost to the end here. This one. We'll go down to the end, and then we'll back stitch a couple stitches. And one thing you can use that comes in very handy when you're working on something like this is leaders and enders. We use these in quilting a lot if you're not familiar. They're just little scraps of fabric that you can use to put under your machine, so that when you start sewing, the leader, as a leader, it will lead you into the fabric so that the fabric doesn't go on the end when you, and it tends to happen sometimes on the ends too when you finish. So I'm at the end, so I'm going to put this here and use it as an ender and just go across it. Then I can very easily clip this off, and the end of my fabric is nice and straight, and I don't have any issues. So that's a good thing to remember. And here's our little space at the top to give us that little space, because we have to bring these up, and sew them together, and that will help us to have a little room more easily to lay this flat. So now we're going to do the other side, and this is the other one, the other leg of the windmill. Now, because I have this leader in here, it's going to be a little difficult, but see, now I'm starting up here where I already have fabric established, so I can take this leader out, and I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to pull this out. Now, if I was quilting, I would leave that in there and just keep right on going if I was sewing squares together. So just so you know, that's a little handy thing to know. You never know when something like that's going to come up and you're going to need it. And I'm working on several quilts right now that are, I have 2 in the works right now, and I just finished one. And it's my own personal quilt that I'm working on, my king size, and then I have one for my granddaughter that I'm working on, which I'm really afraid to show online because she's on YouTube a lot, and if you're watching Serenity, you're not going to see it on here. So, because she'd be right on here. She would be wanting to see what Grandma D is making for her, because she asked me about it, because she's the last one. And like I said in another video that I did, I believe that, you know, quilts have to let you know who they're for. And sometimes I learned as I went that who I thought the quilt was for wasn't who it was for. And that's okay. I mean, you know, it's kind of hard to explain. I mean, it just kind of works out that way, you know. But, okay, so I'm going to cut this thread off here. I can use my cutter, but I have had a few problems with my cutter. And so, let me get this out of the way. I got too much stuff here. I've had problems with my cutter, and I got to go have it looked at. And I don't want my thread to get all tangled up, and then I have to stop the video. It's just much easier to cut the threads. I mean, heck, we did it this way for years before cutters, right? Those of us who are older sewists, and we were sewing before the machines got schmancy. And so that's kind of how that works. But so here's what we're going to do. I have this sewn together, and I'm going to iron my seam flat here. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to iron this flat right here. So this is laid out nice and flat, which will help me to do the rest of this. Now remember, these pieces are not, they do not have any interfacing on them. That was only on the front. So we've got this ironed. We're going to do this one. Now, and another thing, when we're sewing these windmill legs together, the directions did indicate that when sewing G to H, so it's 2 of the legs on here, you have to leave a 6-inch unsewn section. So when you're sewing up, it shows right here, when you're sewing this up, you need to leave a 6-inch section here that's open. And I marked that and I underlined it because a girl can forget. And what that will allow you to do is, because this has to be turned right side out to turn the bag, turn everything right side out, and then you just top stitch it and sew it. And then that's when your bag will be completed at that point. So I'm going to iron this together. Oh my goodness. I'm going to iron this flat. All right, so we've got that done, and I'm going to lay it out for the next step, and I'll be back. Okay, so now I've got these pieces laid out. You remember when we did the outside of the bag, we had to line these seams up. And then you need to also leave your 1/2 inch here and your 1/2 inch here to give you that little extra, the same thing that we have down here. And so I'm going to fold this up. Oh, I've got these backwards. Sorry, my mistake. They have to be right sides together. So this goes like this. This one goes this way. Okay, there we go. Now this has to be right sides together like this, matching your seam. And then I'm going to fold this up so that the right sides are together and the seam is matching. And we want to check that and get that in the right place. Okay. And then I'm going to pin this. I'm going to mark my line, mark my 1/2 inch marks on each end, and I'll be back. Okay, so I have this all pinned and marked. This is our 1/2 inch mark on this end. This is our 1/2 inch mark on this end. And this is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So now one thing I thought I would mention that you may already know if you're a quilter, when you need to align your seams, you can put your pin through your top seam and try to match it up at the bottom. On the underside, as you're coming out the other side, you can match it up so it comes through the seam. And then do the same thing when you go through up here. And you can be pretty rest assured that when you go through here, you're going to be lined up. And since I have ironed these flat, it's going to create less bulk as I sew it, and that's going to be really handy as well. So, because everything will lay flat when we iron this, everything will lay flat and it will look nice. Okay, so we are going to sew this piece together. And I have asked my children to buy me a stand for my camera. So I'm hoping that soon I won't have to be carrying my camera around with me and make you guys seasick. Sometimes when people film, I feel like they're making me seasick because their camera's all over the place, you know. But we do the best we can because we want to share what we love. So, all right, I'm going to get this lined up here. And we're going to sew forward, back. Now, if I hit a pin today, bear with me because, you know, it happens. So, I'm really excited to have this bag. I'm hoping that it will be as beautiful as I think it's going to be, and that it will look nice. So, because I really want to use it when I travel at the end of the month. I've never made a bag. This is my first time. I've never made a bag, but I do have, just give me 1 second. I purchased a pattern offline for a Hemingway bag. I got it off of eBay through Sew Becca. She's a wonderful gal that I follow here on YouTube. And she made these, and she put this eBay entrepreneur in her list of people that it's Krista Brinkerhoff of Center Street Quilts. I bought this pattern. These are adorable, aren't they? And the zippers are on an angle. Now, I'm not really afraid of doing a zipper. I've not done a lot of them, but we'll give it a try. But this pattern was only $10, and it was a PDF download. So I downloaded it, and it's available in my Etsy as long as I need, as many times as I want to download it. It's available. So I'm gonna make a couple of those. But this is my first bag, so I thought I would share that. And I would be interested to know, like, I'm kind of new at filming too, and I don't have a lot of fancy equipment yet. I don't have special lighting. This is my sewing lights here is what we're using. I'd like to know what you think. I mean, if you could be brutally honest with me, that would be great, because it can only help me when as I go down the road and I'm filming more. I mean, I know there are people out there who really have wonderful equipment and fantastic lighting and all the things, and I don't know if I'll ever have that. I don't know if I will ever go that far, but yeah, so I would be interested to know what you think of how I'm doing so far, and every opinion counts. Everybody's opinion counts. So, almost to the end here. Okay. Okay, we got to cut our thread at this end. I know the other day when I was sewing with you the other day, yesterday, I didn't realize it until I was watching it afterwards, but the fabric got in the way and you couldn't see what I was sewing, and I apologize for that. It'll get better as I get more equipment. But this is the finished product so far. Now I am going to iron this, and I will be back when I have a section pinned so that you can see that. Okay, so I have this pinned. And this is where the last time when I said you clip the seam a little bit, and it allows it to lay more flatter, because this is your corner and it will help you to have a crisper corner when you get that far. And this is my 1/2 inch seam allowance, and it goes all the way up to this end. And so I'm going to pin all 4 of my corners, clip my seam here at the bottom, and then I will meet you back at the sewing machine. Okay, so a couple quick things. I did mention that this is a friction pen, but one thing I did not say is that this pen erases with heat. This end piece is like a permanent eraser for the pen, and you can erase, and it will erase your ink, or it erases with the heat from your iron. So as I'm doing this project, when I iron my seams open, it's making the friction ink disappear. This pen was just a few dollars at RebsFabStash, where I am an affiliate, and I really love it. And I had mentioned the other day some of my other pieces of swag that I have gotten in my stash boxes from Rebs. This is one. This is a little ruler, a pull-out ruler. I really love it. And also, the other day, when I got done sewing, I dropped my pins on the floor. This is a magnet, and it is amazing. This thing went all over the floor, and it picked them all up off the floor. And I got this as some swag in one of my RebsFabStash boxes. Isn't that cute? And I thought, I don't know if I'll ever use that. Well, lo and behold, I've used it a couple times. So it's really handy to have. I keep that in my little spinny thing behind my sewing machine. And also, another thing I wanted to mention is when you're sewing, you know, a lot of people don't pin. They just go, you pin or clip. I have pins and I have clips here. I use these clips all the time. They came in this little thing. I got it off of Amazon. You do whatever you're comfortable with. If you want 5,000 pins on there, put 5,000 pins on there. Nobody's going to care. All you care is that your project turns out nice. Now, when I did mark, where's the one I marked? I marked one of these for my lines. Here it is. Remember I said we had to mark for a 6-inch opening? There's one mark, and there's the other mark. And this is 6 inches, so that I can turn this right side out. So I'll sew like from here down to the mark, stop. I will back stitch here and here. Then I will back stitch here and at the bottom. And that way everything will hold when I turn it right side out, because the threads could pull. And if they pull, then you got a problem, Houston, because it's gonna come apart on you, and you don't want that. So we are going to sew all 4 of my corners together here, and then once I get that done, I will be back. I will show you what I did. I'll be back. Okay, so I'm sewing the last leg of the windmill inside lining of the bag together. One thing that you want to be sure of when you're sewing something like this, and it's got all these corners like laying under here, you know, like here, they can get caught in your seam if they kind of they'll get under there and they'll get caught. So when you're lining up your seam line and everything, you just want to run your hand under there and just make sure that everything is out of the way, because it could be upsetting if you got it all sewn together and went to turn it right side out and realized you had a corner caught, and then you had to rip it out and fix it. And I mean, why would you want to have to do that? I mean, especially if you're using real fine fabric and you're doing a project where you could rip the fabric really easily if you had to tear it out. That could be a problem. So you want to be careful of that. Just a little FYI. So we're almost done here. We're almost up to the top of this last seam. And these are a 1/2-inch seam allowance on here. And let's see. So now we're going to turn this right side out, and we are going to have a look and see how it looks. There's the other one. Got to cut the threads off. Okay, so we've got this done. And this is your lining for your bag. There. And now I'm pushing my corners out. I'm just using my hand to push the corners out. That's good enough for me. And here's my 6-inch opening to turn my bag in the seam allowance that we will top stitch later when we're done. Yay! So we have the inside done. Isn't that cute? I love that fabric. That is so cute. Little beehives, and there's a little chef with a hat, a little kid baking and cooking. And there's deer on here. I don't know where they are, but there's deer on here too. And there's our hole to turn our bag right side out. So the next thing that we have to do is the pocket. We're going to create the pocket. Now it's going to go on the inside of the bag. So you don't necessarily need both squares to be wording, because one's going to be facing the inside of the bag. But I had them, and I thought, well, now if you were going to put it on the outside of the bag, or if you're going to have 2 pockets, you would need 4 pieces, one on each side of the bag, and you could just do what you're doing to one side to the other side, you know, and that would be fine. So I am going to get organized for this and get ready, and I'll be back. Okay, so we are going to do the pocket now, and we have to prep that. So what we have to do is iron a 1/4 inch from the bottom on both pieces of the pocket. Then we're going to, I'm going to put this where you can see it. Then we're going to put them facing, right sides facing, and we're going to line that up. And then we are going to pin and sew around the sides and the top. So it's going to be 3/4 of the way around so that we can turn it. Now, you may want more pins or less pins. Whatever you're comfortable with is what you want to do. And you want to pin this where you folded it so that when you sew it, it will stay. You see that? And I've got it pinned on both sides so that when I come down here and I sew it, it won't unfold on me and it'll stay put. So that's just a little thing that will make life easier for you when you're sewing your pocket together. And you're going to be starting on one end on the bottom and going all the way around to the other end where you have it folded. Okay, so I've got this together, right sides together, so that when we turn it right side out, everything will be facing the right direction. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go down, around, and up. On a 1/4 inch, it wants you to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now this, actually, now that I think about it, this is a good place where a leader would come in handy. So we're going to put a leader in, because when I butt this up against the leader to start sewing it, it will keep this from bunching up, because you got a little bit of fabric here. You got 4 layers of fabric, and you don't want it to bunch. So, and you want to be on a 1/4 inch. Okay, pull your pen, and then we want to back stitch, couple stitches, and just go right on around. And the way this is cut, because it's got this square in here, right on the edge of the blue here, it's a 1/4 inch. So it makes it really easy to follow as you sew your pocket together. I'm going to turn here. And this presser foot does not provide me a 1/4 inch marker like my other one does, but you know, it doesn't have to be a totally exact science. I mean, it would look nicer if it was, but it does not have to be. So now we're going to go back. Now I had switched to white thread because I was working on the pink, but I decided to just leave it with white thread, even though this is black, because you're not really going to see it anyway. So we're going to open this up. Now we've got this like this. Now, because we are going to turn this pocket right side out, a good thing to do is to clip your corners, and you have your seam here on your corner. Okay, right here. And you want to clip it, but you want to clip it so that you've got a little bit of space, so you don't clip your seam, but you clip it on an angle on the corner like that. Because when you clip your corners, it will help your corners to be more crisp. And then another thing that I do is I clip like just a little bit, not too close to the seam, but just on an angle right there and right there, and that will help your, just a couple times. And if it's like clipping curves. I don't know if you make clothing. I make clothing, like you clip curves on shoulders, cuffs, where things are circular, and that will help things to lay better and look nicer. So now we're going to turn this right side out. Oh, that's cute. And we're going to, now I want to show you something I bought at the dollar store. And I know they make more expensive schmancy things. I got this at my local dollar store. It's a palette cake knife set. But this one right here has a pretty good, what I think it'd be a pretty good corner turner. And this is my first time using it. And they have a couple different ones in there, but this one, this little guy, I think might work for these. So you'd put this in here and you would just push your corner out. Oh yeah, that's working pretty good. And then you can run it down your seam and it will help push out your seam so that it's easier to iron, because you're going to have to lay that seam flat. So you can do that and then run it along your top seam Yeah, that's working pretty good. You don't want to push too hard because you don't want to push a hole in your seam or your corners either. So you can push that out. That's pushing pretty good. That's pushing pretty good. I'm pretty satisfied with that. And that gives me a fairly good corner there. And then we're going to run down this seam. That helps push them out because they tend to roll in, you know, because of the sewing. Now we're going to iron this. We're going to iron this flat because you have to iron it flat. And then what you'll want to do is if your seams aren't right where you want them, you can just roll them like that. And that will help your seam to lay flat. And then we will iron that down. Go around and do this part. And I'm going to continue ironing this down, and then we have to go back to the machine, so I'll be back. Okay, so we're back. I have this all pressed. Isn't that cute? I love that saying. Learning to ignore things is one of the greatest paths to inner peace. That should be tattooed on my forehead. So now what it wants us to do is to top stitch the top and the bottom, but I'm going to go all the way around just to secure the pocket. I'm going to top stitch it all the way around. And top stitching is just going real close to the edge and making a nice clean stitch, less than a 1/4 inch, like 1/8 of an inch, you know, around the edge, just to make it look nice and clean and helps hold everything together. So that's what we're going to do. And this is white thread, which I am not at all worried about. That's fine because we have white thread in the seam and in the inner part of the bag. So that's fine. No worries. And you can make your threads coordinate to whatever you want, whatever colors you like, you know. You don't have to be traditional and all of that. That's not required. Like I've said in past videos, I go off grid with just about everything I do. I always wind up doing something a little different than what the instructions say. But with this particular project, I did not, mainly because this is my first time making a bag like this, and I thought, I better not go rogue. I better follow the instructions and do what they tell me the first time. Then when I make another one, I might change up the colors. I might make the colors of my windmill a little different. Whoop, I got a little over there. There we go. And we'll see. I might even use fleece, fusible fleece interfacing instead of the medium weight interfacing like I used on this particular bag. I mean, you know, or I might quilt it. Now that Hemingway bag that I'm going to make, that's going to be quilted. So, you know, you can just do whatever makes you happy. You know, so now what they want us to do, now that we've got this all sewn together, this way, we've got this all sewn together. This is our pocket that will go on the inside of our bag. And what they say in the instructions is you have to hold the bag up so that it is like this. And you don't want to put it on the side where you have your opening. Okay. You want to put it on the other side. And what you will do is position it where you want it on your bag. So mine will be, you know, just probably like right here, you know. And you can use your point here. Like you could measure on each side and get the center. Or a thing you can do is you can fold this in half and finger press it just to get a seam, just to get a mark on your fabric so that you know where your center is. And then you can like center it based on this seam on your, in the middle of your V, because you can rest pretty sure that that's good. And I would move down a little bit because we have to put these together and then sew them and turn them right side out and everything. So you're going to need some sewing space here. So you want to move down, and then it goes right there on your bag, and that's where you'll sew it in place. Now on the instructions, you can see here that the how the bag is, and you can see where the pocket is, and that's pretty much what they did, what I showed you. So I'm gonna put the pocket in place and get it pinned, and then I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so I have my pocket pinned on the inside of my bag. And this is the other side with my hole to turn it. Don't forget that. And when you pin it, you want to make sure that you're not pinning both sides of the bag. You want to pin on just one side, because that could happen too. And my sewing machine has a arm on it for sewing sleeves. I took my, I have a tray that fits on my machine. I've removed that so that I can slip it on here and more easily sew it, as if I was sewing like the sleeve of a shirt or something. And hopefully that will make it easier. I'm not sure if it will or not, but we're going to try it. Whoops. So we're going to sew this on here. And you can go right over. Oh, you want to make sure that your opening up here at the top, that you don't sew your opening closed. I almost did that. So you want to start up here at the top, and you want to do a L shape around here and make sure that you do not sew your opening closed, like I just did almost. So that's important. And you want to back stitch this and keep checking underneath to make sure your other side of your bag doesn't get caught in your seam, because that could totally happen. And I would even recommend like doing this like 3 times, like go forward, back, and go forward again, because you've got, you're going to have things in your pocket on your bag, and you don't want it to start pulling away. You know, that would not be a plan. So I'm going to sew around here and get this pocket attached, and I'll be back. So I have the pocket all sewed on the bag, and isn't that cute? Super cute. I love that. And it's a nice big pocket. It'll fit my cell phone or whatever I need in there just fine. I'm super excited about this. It's going to be great. So I've got that done. Now I'm going to do the straps. And this is a really simple process. And I have a little turning tool that's pretty cool. It's this little guy. And you can buy these. I think this is a Dritz product, because I looked it up, and it's a Dritz product, I think. And it's got this little hook. It looks kind of like a crochet hooky kind of a thing on here on the end. And what you do is you put this through your tube, whether it's a strap or whatever tube you're making a tube for, whatever you're making, and you hook this on the end of the fabric, and then you just, and you slide it through, and it turns your tubes. Super slick. So now, or you can use a safety pin. These giant quilting safety pins are really nice because they're very sturdy, and you could hook 2 or 3 of them together if you needed to. These are quilting sewing pins. I don't know if you can see those. And they are angled so that you can hook your quilt sandwich together. And these are really super strong pins. They hold up really well. And if you had to hook 2 or 3 of these together to hang on to them and put them on your tube to turn it, that would be great too. Whatever works for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have these wrong side out, and I am going to sew them on probably, I'm trying to make up my mind how wide I want the strap. Where's my ruler? Oh, it's here somewhere. Here it is. Trying to figure out how wide I want these straps. If I sew them on a 1/2 inch, when I turn it, the strap will be 1 inch wide, which will make it probably about that wide. And I'm thinking that's all I want. I don't like a real wide strap across my shoulder because it makes my neck hurt. So I think I'm going to do them on a 1/2 inch. And then that way it will be sure and catch my interfacing, because over time that glue can let go and then your interfacing is flopping around in there and you don't want that. So I kind of think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to sew all 4 of the straps, and when I get down to turning the last one, I will come back and show you how I do that. So it's just a straight seam all the way down with a little back stitch at each end to help hold it, because when you turn it, it's going to put stress on that seam on the top, and you want it to hold up while you turn it and not start pulling apart. So, okay, I will be back. Well, I've got the first strap turned right side out. See, they're pretty narrow. I was not able to use this because of the narrowness of the strap coupled with the length. It was just too much for the length of this thing. I got it, started it, but then it got hung up in there and I couldn't get it any farther. So I pulled it back out and I wound up turning it the old-fashioned way with a safety pin. And it took a little bit. It's a long strap, so I figured you weren't going to want to sit through all of that. But I wanted to show you this before I start turning the next strap. What I did was, this seam, this is a 1/2 inch seam. That's a lot of bulk in here when you're trying to turn your strap. So I cut it way down. I would have ironed the seam open, but I decided to cut it way down to cut down on bulk. So I'm pretty close to my seam here. There's my seam right there, and I'm cutting it pretty close. It's less than 1/4 inch, but it will help, and it did make it easier because I took a lot of the bulk out before I started turning it, because you also have the stiffness of the medium weight interfacing. I don't know how you would turn these if you put heavyweight interfacing in there. I think I would have had to sew closer to the edge, or maybe did a different method of making straps where you fold the ends together till they meet and then you sew it right side out. That's another method you can use for sewing straps. I've done that before. The only thing about that is you've got that seam on one side of your strap and you want it against your body and not on the outside where people can see it, just for aesthetic purposes. So you have to be really mindful of that. I mean, so this has its advantages, doing it this way, and the other way has its advantages too, because then you don't have to cope with turning it. So I've got this long piece here that I cut off that I'm going to throw away. And what I did is I took my safety pin and I pinned it pretty good. I gave it a lot of fabric here to grip into, because once you start turning it and you get halfway, if the fabric rips and the pin lets go, you got to turn it all back out and start over again. Not a plan. So I've got my pin in here, and then you have to just start turning it through, and you have to turn your end down so that it starts down. Now this took me a little bit to get it going to where I could start pulling it, because you have to get this fabric to start turning over, and that took a little bit. It was a little bit of a challenge at first to get it to start, because it is small. And because I wanted smaller straps, This is the price you pay sometimes, and you have to work it. But this one seems to be going a little easier than the other one did. And then you can start pulling your fabric, and because we are hooked through the interfacing and the fabric, it's going a little better. If you're using just fabric and you're doing this, just turning it with straight fabric, you want to make sure that your pen has a good grip on your fabric, that you're giving it plenty of fabric to grab onto, so that, and that's why you want a little bit bigger pen, because that will also help, because that will ensure that it makes it to the other end. Because I have had that happen before, where I have gotten halfway through a long tube and my pin broke, or it wouldn't go any farther. It just wouldn't go, or something else happened, and those things happen. I mean, I'm not saying it isn't going to happen to me right now, but I got the other one done and it worked just fine. So I'm trying to get this fabric to turn a little bit. There, it's going now. It's starting to go now. Okay, so we want to continue to push the pin through. And you just want to pull your fabric. Keep pushing the pin through. We'll see if we can hang together through this whole process. This took me a few minutes the first time. That's it's a little work turning a small tube, and sometimes we get too long of a tube and we get them too small. They just don't go. I mean, they just don't go. You know, it happens. And so you just gotta, and then once you get some fabric in there, you can pull the fabric, because once you get the pin through to the other end, then the tube turns. It will go just fine. Now see, I got all this balled up here at the end. Yeah, so but I'm getting there. I'm about halfway, so I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna try and see if I can get this to, I'm gonna work at this a little bit, and I'll be back. Okay, I finally got it to start moving along. I heard a little rip in there. See, so that's why you need to make sure that when you're turning your tube, that your pen has a good grip on there, because especially this is, like I said, this is a really long tube, and I would hate to get like 80% of the way and have something go wrong. But this pen is a pretty good pen, and you just don't want to pull too hard. You want to be kind of gentle as you're putting it through, so that it hangs on to the fabric, because you don't want to have a surprise at the other end and find out your tube is, because you'll wind up throwing it away, because you won't be able to get it turned back the other way to start over. It's just too long. We made it. We're at the other end. So now all you got to do is just pull your tube. Pull it, pull it, pull it. Make sure you got a hold of this, and just keep pulling, and it'll go, and it'll turn right side out for you. There. Now this looks pretty rough, but I ironed it. This is the first one. I ironed it, and it's fine, because this is a small tube. See, it looks pretty. It looks like a cat's tail right now. It looks pretty funny. And your pin might get hung up a little bit in your end because there was a lot of pressure on it. But these pins are very strong. If you have extra large safety pins at home, I used to use baby diaper pins. I guess I'm dating myself, because my kids, my first two children, wore cloth diapers. And so I use their diaper pins, and those work really good, because them heads, they're designed to hang on because they're on an infant. So they work really well too. So, and then you have to lay this out flat on your ironing board and get your seam out and iron it flat. And then I'm going to top stitch this to make it look really nice. So I'm going to go to the ironing board. I'm going to iron this, and then I'll be back. So we've got both the straps turned right side out and all ironed. Now, the reason you might want to think about putting top stitching on here is because they're only ironed and they may want to start shaping back into the shape of a tube. And then they get twisted and they don't lay right, and you're not going to be happy with your bag. So I would suggest considering top stitching. They don't discuss that in the pattern, and they don't really tell you how to put the straps together, but I'm assuming that they assume that that's known. So I'm going to go all the way down, around, back up and around, and I'm going to top stitch all the way around in a square. And I'm going to go close to the edge just to kind of help that seam lay flat. So I'm going to go all the way around both of these, and when I get almost to the end of the second strap, I will show you how that's going to look. So I'm almost at the end here, and I'm just going to do a little back stitching here. And I am almost out of thread in my bobbin. It's like, it's down. It's pretty close. It's getting down there. It's pretty close. But so now that these straps have the top stitching in them, I hope that you can see that. We'll move over here where the lighting is better. These have the top stitching on them, and it really makes them nice. It makes them feel like a shoulder bag should feel. And it has, in the original video, I had done a sample to see where the bag was going to hang, and it will hang right about right there with two straps, which is nice. And I almost wish they were a little longer, because you have to, get it over your head. But I mean, if you wanted longer straps, you could certainly do that and it would be fine. You could just add extensions onto these when you cut them with, if you have enough fabric, and make them longer, or you could make straps out of binding that you have laying around, or whatever works for you. So the next step is to attach the straps to the inside of the bag. And this is a photo of what it will look like. And you want to make sure that when you attach your straps that they're hanging down, because they're going to be inside the bag, because you're going to put the lining inside the bag, and then we're going to sew it together, and then we're going to use that hole in the lining to flip everything out the other way. And so it's going to, your straps will be going the wrong way if you don't put them down inside the bag. On like when you've got your bag here, you've got this here, you will hook your straps on so they're hanging down like this and coming up. And you want to be very mindful that when you hook them on, that they're straight. My advice would be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin them, and then I'm going to put it on to make sure the straps are straight, that they're not twisted. Because if they're twisted, excuse me, that's not going to work. So I'm going to pin these on and get it right, and then I'll show you how it looks. Okay, so I have these pinned in place. They're pinned right at the top of the peaks on both sides. And you see how they're hanging? You want them to hang straight. And you could even, the pins will hold enough for you to take it like this and make sure that your straps are hanging straight. And mine appear to be hanging straight. So then you can see, when I get it on, it's going to hang right about there. Now that's kind of low. Now that I got the strap and the purse on the strap, I'm like, I might raise it up a little bit and try that. And that's like probably an inch or two. I'm going to measure my straps and I'm going to see. That's kind of low because that's a big bag. It's a good sized bag. So, I think I'm going to adjust those and see how that looks. And, so this is the end of segment 2 for the bag. And we will come back and do part 3. We will put the bag together and do a final try on. I am going to have to end this video for today. So I hope that you will come back for part 3 of the Windmill bag from RebsFabStash, where I am an affiliate, and I hope that you will try this bag for yourself. And so that's all I have for today from Grandma D. That's a wrap. You have a wonderful night, and we'll be back.